name first, right?
Good afternoon.
Wait a minute. So I just want to say, so everybody should have a list of all the speakers. If you don't, let us know. That'll save us time. Kevin Sexton will be guiding the news conference. You'll hear from all the speakers that are listed there. We're going to open it up for a Q&A afterwards, but we'll only take questions after all the speakers are finished. We're hoping to get through this in 45 minutes or so. But with that, Kevin, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Kevin Sexton. I'm a Vice President for the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. We're a division of the Teamsters Rail Conference. Joining me today are representatives from the 5 unions that make up the Long Island Railroad Bargaining Coalition. From the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, Vice President James Lewis, General Chairman Gilman Lang. From the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen, Vice General Chairman James Sokolowski. From the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, District 19, General Chairman Sean O'Connor. From the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, General Chairman, Local 589, Jeffrey Klein. And from the Transportation Communications Union, National Vice President Nicholas Peluso. At this time, I'd like to invite Jim Sokolowski to the podium to say a few words.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, everybody, for being here today. My name is Jim Sokolowski. I am the Vice General Chairman of the Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen. The simple facts of this dispute are as follows. The Long Island Railroad and the MTA have money in their coffers. The Long Island Railroad ridership is at post-pandemic highs and nearly pre-pandemic levels. The Long Island Railroad is setting new records for on-time performance. Therefore, the Long Island Railroad Bargaining Coalition is willing to accept the terms of the contract already reached on the property for the first 3 years, 3%, 3%, and 3.5%, but have proposed the 4th year that will make the difference in the cost of living in the area in which the employees live. This is not greedy. The MTA can afford it, and now it's time for them to take care of their workforce. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Sean O'Connor of the IAM.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean O'Connor. I serve as a General Chairman of District 19 of the International Association of Machinists. Our union proudly represents hundreds of members on the Long Island Railroad, skilled men and women who keep this railroad running safely and reliably every day. We're here today as part of a bargaining coalition of unions at the Long Island Railroad. Together, we are united in our efforts to negotiate a fair and equitable contract under the framework of the Railway Labor Act. This coalition represents not only our members, but the broader workforce that makes the Long Island Railroad one of the best commuter railroads in the nation. Unfortunately, instead of working toward meaningful solutions at the bargaining table, the MTA and Long Island Railroad have chosen to demonize our members in the press. This is both disappointing and unacceptable. Let me be clear. Our members are not the problem. They are the reason this railroad operates day in and day out. They are mothers, fathers, neighbors, and taxpayers who dedicate their lives to serving the riding public. When we advocate for better wages and working conditions, we are simply exercising the rights guaranteed to us under federal law. The Railway Labor Act exists to ensure fair bargaining between carriers and labor organizations. We're following the law. We are following the process, and we will not apologize for doing so. What we seek is a modest, real wage growth that keeps pace with the rising cost of living and reflects the essential work our machinists perform. Our demands are not excessive. They are fair, reasonable, and long overdue. We call on the MTA and the Long Island Railroad to step back from the rhetoric and get serious at the bargaining table. Stop vilifying the very people who keep this system running, show the same commitment to fairness and responsibility that our members show every day on the job. We stand united with our coalition partners, and we will continue to fight until we secure a contract that respects the work of our machinists and provides the stability and security our families deserve. Thank you. Next up is Jeff Klein of IBW Local 589.
Thank you, Sean. I got it. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Klein. I'm the General Chairman of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 589. I have the honor of representing the nearly 1,000 electricians who work every day on the Long Island Railroad to ensure that the riding public gets to where they need to go to safely and comfortably. That being said, it's unfortunate that we are here. It's unfortunate that the Long Island Railroad has spent more time over the past several days negotiating in the press than it has spent in the last 2 years negotiating with this labor coalition. The Long Island Railroad would rather negotiate in the headlines than at the bargaining table. That is a simple fact. They have intentionally misled the public of our position in an attempt to build public resentment against the very employees they claim to revere. Not too long ago, our coalition's members were heralded by the Long Island Railroad as heroes moving heroes. How soon they forget. So let's be clear, contrary to what you've been told by the Long Island Railroad and the MTA, the coalition has accepted the same 3-year deal that other unions have already agreed to. You heard that right. We've accepted it. All we are seeking is a 4th year that would provide modest wage gains, allowing our members to maintain their purchasing power by keeping pace with inflation and their heads above water. That's a principle every hardworking New Yorker can relate to and appreciate. Only at the Long Island Railroad is that a foreign concept. Only at the Long Island Railroad is that considered unreasonable. Instead of negotiating with us, the Long Island Railroad and the MTA have shamelessly chosen to stoke fear into the hearts and minds of the riding public by casting a shadow of a looming strike over the very people they pledged to serve. In closing, I'd like to say to Governor Hochul, if you're watching, and you should be, stop making it about Washington and make it about New York, and give our members the fair contract you know they deserve. Next up will be Nick Peluso from the TCU.
Good afternoon. My name is Nick Peluso. I am the National Vice President of TCU IAM. We are proud to represent over 1,300 craft employees on the Long Island Railroad. Our members include train operators, train dispatchers, ticket agents, cleaners, and ushers, just to name a few. For over 2 years, we have been involved in negotiations with the Long Island Railroad and the MTA. For over 2 years, we have heard excuse after excuse for why our members cannot receive a fair contract. The clock has finally ran out, and the time for excuses has come to an end. Our members have made it clear they expect a contract that actually allows them to make real wage gains. Unfortunately, the Long Island Railroad has refused to offer a contract that meets that demand. And our expectations are nothing spectacular. They are extremely fair and more than reasonable. Workers who keep Long Island Railroad moving every single day deserve raises to keep up with the rest of the commuter rail industry. Unfortunately, it appears the Long Island Railroad and the MTA have convinced Governor Hochul that their hands are tied. So instead of working with labor to reach a productive solution, Governor Hochul has decided to play games of political convenience, and the worn-out blame game of blaming the current administration. This is nonsense. She knows it, we know it, and the riding public should know it. We are proud to partner with this coalition. It's great to work with all these true labor leaders, and Kevin's done a great job as our spokesman. We are confident we will secure an agreement that meets our members' expectations, and we won't stop fighting until we do. Long Island Railroad, MTA, Governor Hochul, stop the excuses, stop the games, come to the table, let's get this done. Thank you. I'd like to now introduce Gail Lang from the BLET.
Good afternoon. My name is Gilman Lang, General Chairman for the Long Island Railroad, BLET. We appreciate your time and attention as we update the public, policymakers, and our members on the outcome of our recent strike authorization vote. Today, we are announcing that our respective membership voted overwhelmingly to authorize a strike should it become legally necessary under the Railway Labor Act. Over the past couple of weeks, BLET members who work at the Long Island Railroad have been voting on strike authorization. Balloting ended at 11 a.m. this morning, and 99.9% of 529 active members voted overwhelmingly to strike if necessary. This is not a strike notice. It does, however, send an unmistakable message that our membership are unified, committed, and prepared to take all lawful actions necessary to secure a fair and reasonable contract. For more than 2 years, our coalition has been bargaining in good faith with the Long Island Railroad. Despite our repeated efforts to reach a voluntary settlement, we remain at an impasse. Our members have gone more than 3 years without a raise, while costs for housing, food, fuel, and health care continue to climb. We are not asking for anything extraordinary. Our proposal seeks only to secure an agreement which provides for a modest improvement of real wages. Doing so ensures that inflation does not erode our members' purchasing power and aligns with industry standards that are consistent with agreements not only reached at neighboring rail carriers like Amtrak, SEPTA, Keolis, but rail carriers across the country. Our fight for wages is also about ensuring the railroad can attract and retain skilled workforce needed to provide safe, reliable service and into the future. Despite such, the MTA and Long Island Railroad have chosen to escalate this publicly and vilify the very workforce that keeps New York moving instead of working towards a constructive solution. Before we go on, it is necessary to correct the record regarding recent statements made by New York State, the MTA, and the Long Island Railroad, many of which have been repeated in the press coverage. On wage demands, the MTA claims we are demanding 15% raises over 3 years, averaging 5% annually. That is simply untrue. Our proposal calls for a 16% increase over 4 years, average of 4% per year. It is deliberately structured to account for agreements ratified by other bargaining units at the Long Island Railroad in the first 3 years, with a modest adjustment in the 4th year to ensure our members' wages keep pace with inflation. We are not seeking to surpass other agreements. We are trying to ensure that our members do not fall behind. On negotiations, the MTA suggests that we have shown our cards and are not being reasonable. That's simply not true. We have negotiated in good faith for more than 2 years. And when factoring that the MTA budgets 2% towards annual general wage increases, we are talking about a difference of 1% per year. What we cannot accept is a deal that locks in a loss of real wages and forces workers to fund their own wages through concessions. On mediation, claims that the National Mediation Board released the parties from mediation is unprecedented or factually wrong. For example, in 2022, freight railroads and all the labor organizations were in mediation for 4.5 months before being released. Blaming the Trump administration for their failure to bargain in good faith is just another finger-pointing game played by New York State and the MTA. On employee pay, highlighting outlier salaries is an attempt to shame employees and is something we will not tolerate. No worker writes their own paycheck. Employees' earnings are the result of the MTA's own scheduling decisions, driven by a 40% increase in service since the opening of Grand Central Terminal, and compounded by a shortage of qualified employees. Many of our members have been required to work to the federal legal limit on a regular basis to meet service demands. Without their sacrifices, this region would have been brought to a standstill. Today's vote reflects the frustration of our members, but it also reflects their unity, their determination, and their belief in fairness. We will continue to bargain in good faith, but we will not agree to a contract that forces our members to fall behind while working at other railroads, moving ahead. To the riders who depend on the Long Island Railroad every day, strike is the last thing we want. We understand the hardship it would cause and will do everything possible to avoid that outcome. And while the MTA is willing to use commuters to play a game of chicken with our unions days before Long Island is to host an international event, we will continue being the adults in the room. And we refuse to let New York State and the MTA embarrass our region on the world stage. As such, all labor organizations party to the coalition have already formally requested, or will be formally requesting, that President Trump establish an emergency board. Doing so ensures that service continues while the board carefully reviews the facts, hears the parties, and issues recommendations that can form the basis for a fair and sustainable agreement. Again, let me repeat, the 5 unions that comprise the majority of the Long Island Railroad unionized workforce have either already requested or soon will request with federal authorities that a presidential emergency board be formed to make recommendations that could lead to a contract settlement. This action does not mean a strike won't happen, but it does mean that it won't happen now. It also means that we are availing ourselves to the steps of the Railway Labor Act so that hopefully it will lead to a settlement. Jim Lewis from the BLET will present an approximate timeline for the Presidential Emergency Board.
Good afternoon. My name's Jim Lewis. I'm the National Vice President for the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. I'm the I oversee the passengers properties that represented by the BLET, along with one of them being Long Island Railroad. To explain what we're talking about here, under the Railway Labor Act, Section 151 or 159A, there is a special procedure for commuter service. And there is, under paragraph B, a request for the establishment of the emergency board. And I'll read this to you. If a dispute between the parties described in the subsection A of this section is not adjusted under the foregoing provisions of this chapter, and the President does not, under Section 160 of this title, create an emergency board to investigate and report such disputes, then any party to the dispute or the governor of any state through which the service has been the subject of the dispute is operated may request the President to establish such an emergency board. So, what does that mean in language here? To give you a little background, I've already done 5 previous PEB boards here in the last 10 years. So what I'm going to give you is the latest one that I was involved with over on New Jersey Transit, and how a kind of a timeline would be, because I think that'll be a question that a lot of people will be asking. If the President, he shall put the board under the next section that says if he does get a request that he shall go and establish a board. If we looked at how it was done under New Jersey Transit, a board would be established somewhere around this 18th of this month. So then what happens is there's a 120-day status quo, and during that time the establishment of the board would be on. Within 30 days of the board establishment, which would be right around this 18th of September, they would then have hearings, and then they would give their recommendation. So the recommendation to the President would be middle of October. And then if there is no settlement between the parties from the recommendation of the board, the National Mediation Board then holds a public interest meeting to see if they can also try to
both sides to agree. And if that does not occur, then in January, that 120-day period runs out. But the unique item of Section 9, and it only applies under the Railway Labor Act to commuter service, you can have a second PEB board, which was done over on New Jersey Transit here, if everybody remembers here, just several months ago. The status quo would then, with the second board, would also maintain. Each party would then submit basically a final offer and a second board appointed by the president. It would be a different usually it's a three-person board. It's usually three new individuals on the board. And they usually get them from the National Mediation Board. They are trained mediators and arbitrators that are known in the rail industry and know how the railroad works. They would then give another recommendation, and then you would have another 60-day cooling off period, which would bring middle of May if either party could not come to an agreement. That's when either side could go to self-help. But what this does by requesting this under our act, this will, ensure one thing, that the riders will be covered here. And the question is, why are we making this request? We have watched over the past week the Long Island Railroad, the MTA, and the governor attempt to spin the narrative of this 2+ year contract dispute. I'm not sure if it's for lack of knowledge of the Railway Labor Act on their part or for some other reason. Instead of moving to the next step under the Railway Labor Act process and requesting the establishment of the Presidential Emergency Board, which has been around now established 99 years ago and was done, as I said, just a year ago across the river for New Jersey Transit, they started a scare campaign with press conferences, signage at stations, just to name a few, which results in the customers on the Long Island Railroad wondering if their train will be running. These passengers, they're our friends, our neighbors, our family, and they should be treated much better than we've seen over this past week. This is why the 5 unions decided to be the grown-up in the room and request President Trump to appoint a presidential emergency board per the Railway Labor Act and allow both sides to present their proposals to the board. I can say in my 49 years in the rail industry, this request by the unions is a first. But we need to move the contract disputes to a settlement and still support the riding public that supports us. I thank you, and I'll turn it over to Kevin Sexton for questions. Thank you.
And so, again, we'll have like 20 or 30 minutes for questions. Yes?
Just to clarify, asking for the Presidential Emergency Board, that effectively means it's going to happen. Is there anything that would suggest that the White House would say, nope, we're not doing this, your strike deadline holds?
No.
It
Under
will
Section
happen.
9A of the Railway Labor Act, the president shall appoint when it's requested.
So to be clear, this means there will not be a strike this week.
Correct. Correct.
Alfonso?
Kevin, do you have any concern
And
about...
if I could just interrupt, if you wouldn't mind saying your name and your news organization. When you make
Sure,
your question.
Alfonso Castillo with Newsday. Any concern about what the makeup of that presidential emergency board could be? There is a thought that this is an administration is anti-labor, so whatever recommendation would come out of them might not favor your union.
If we were concerned about that, we wouldn't have requested that.
Yes, sir, in the back.
Yeah, hey, Phil with the Associated Press. So has every union at this point taken a vote to authorize a strike in the event that all of this plays out?
Yes.
Yes, all 5.
All
Yes.
five. Yep.
Their membership has overwhelmingly voted in support of that. Yes.
Yes, Elijah.
Hello, Elijah Westbrook with CBS News New York. So just to get a better understanding, you guys will not essentially go on strike this week, right?
Correct.
That's the understanding. But what do you tell riders who are still feeling a bit on edge about the potential outcome of all this playing out? I mean, it's been talked about for quite some
Sure.
time.
First thing is, we're sorry, and I shouldn't be sorry for the MTA and New York State's behavior, but it's unfortunate that they were placed in that position. It's truly unfortunate that New York State wants to use them as pawns. What I will say is we're doing everything in our power to secure an agreement. And again, it's exceedingly reasonable what we're asking for. So we would just ask them to understand and bear with us as we go through the process. But unfortunately, the MTA will continue to play their games and scare people. Maybe after today, they might dial it down a little. That's our hopes, because all the rhetoric came from them.
Stephanos?
Hi, Captain Stephanos from the New York Times. So could you just give us again quickly the rundown of what PEB means, this first one, what month that puts us through, and if there's a second one, what is the timeline for the soonest we can?
Sure. Jimmy,
And
correct me if I'm wrong.
And the second part is just in terms of the negotiation, are work rules going to be on the table in that sense if you are still seeking a decision?
Work rules were never a part of the conversation. Again, this is more nonsense from Jana Lieber and the MTA. Respectfully, they've never come to the table to talk about work rules. At the end of when it was likely or there was a release that was about to occur, then they came in, they wanted to talk about work rules. They only presented it to 2 of the 5 bargaining units, despite the request from the NMB. So it was all nonsense, never meant anything.
And if I could jump in here, the fact sheet that all of you received, and if you haven't, we have them outside, that gets into some of these issues too. I wanted to flag that just to save some time here.
So to the first part of your question, and please don't quote me on it, and Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong, with the first PEB, that should put us right around mid-January. And if the parties aren't able to settle, by the time the second PEB and the cooling off period runs out, you're looking about mid-May. The dates are approximate based on when the requests are made. But if this process plays through to the end, you're looking about the middle of May next year when the process has been basically exhausted and absent a voluntary settlement. Then you're looking at self-help right around, I would say, May. Middle of May.
In the middle, though, around mid-January, is there any potential for a strike then and not to go to the second?
There is, but it's premature to go there now.
Yes, Ryan?
Robert Vard from Politico. Are you asking for a PEB because you think it's advantageous to negotiate in the middle of a re-election year for the governor instead of now?
So there's a million factors, but nobody's targeting this. This is just unnecessary what they're doing. I mean, think about this. We have the Ryder Cup in less than a week, and they want to embarrass us on the world stage. We've never seen it happen like this. Like Jim said, in 49 years of railroading, he's never seen unions request a presidential emergency board.
Yes, please.
So what are your
Can you
members?
can you say your news, please?
Okay, I'm Marla Diamond with 1010 Wins. So
Hi, Marla.
your members have been living without a raise since 2022. Inflation has soared. What do they think of the possibility of having to wait until May?
Well, so here's the deal. They are in support of the situation. Absent a PEB and going on strike now, does that mean you're going to get it? Does it mean you're not going to get it? The basis of the PEB gives a recommendation for the parties to work around, so that's something that we'll work towards. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Oh, hey. If you're confident in the position, why not go on strike?
Why not go on strike? Honestly, it was reckless what they're doing. So you want us to go on strike right before the Ryder Cup and just hang out there. We didn't think that was responsible. So this is the path we chose.
If the MTA says they'll buy back work rules, are those on the table at all? You said it wasn't a serious part of the negotiation, but if they're putting them on the table, is that something you're open to, or are the work rules sacrosanct?
It's not that you got to understand something. All that means is they're rearranging the furniture in the room, right? So they're saying if you get this form of compensation here,
Yeah.
and you move it over here, it's still the same form of compensation. You're basically paying for your own general wage increase.
Okay, so that's not on the table then?
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Yes.
Evan Sefcovic-Narski, the Daily News. If this is a situation where both sides have said to the press that the other side is stalling, work rules apparently have not been on the table, what makes you think that you're going to get any significant movement out of the MTA by the middle of next spring?
I don't expect any significant movement from the MTA at this stage of the game, to be honest with you. This is nothing new.
want to start doing.
Steve Nesson, WNYC Radio. You guys said you're not going on strike because you want to protect the riders, but the MTA also says if they give you guys the 16% raise that you're asking, they're going to have to increase the fares on riders. Do you have a response?
Absolutely. More scare tactics. Just totally more scare tactics. Again, like Jim said, 49 years of railroading, never has he seen unions request a presidential emergency board. Does anybody in the room remember a time when the MTA and Long Island Railroad had money? I'm just curious, because I don't. They never have money. They're always going to be broke. And if you think about what our ask is, it averages 4% a year, okay, over 4 years. That is exceedingly reasonable, and I don't see one person in this room that's shaking their head in disagreement with me.
Alfonso?
I know you all said the unions are unified, but clearly that's not the case with all the unions. The unions representing more than half of Long Island Railroad workers have already accepted a contract. Can you address that rift that has at times gone public with Smart and Anthony and Simon?
Yeah, I mean, I'll address it. You're saying it's a rift, and I don't see it as a rift. And other unions have their own positions, and they have their right to that, and I respect that. Similarly, we should be respected as well.
And just to clarify, they're not more than half.
You dispute that they represent more than half?
Absolutely.
If I could jump in here, it was indicated to us at the beginning of negotiations by MTA that this coalition represents 55.8% of the workforce, but notice that is one of the details in the fact sheet.
55.08, but yes, that's based off of the Long Island Railroad's numbers that were given to the National Mediation Board. Again, more lies from them.
Yes, sir.
I got one more quick one, Andrew Stiff from Channel 4. Can you just clarify, you're saying that you accepted the 3 years, but want a fourth?
Yeah.
That's
so,
not accepting. If the
we
offer is 3 years, you're rejecting that offer.
So
correct?
we're accepting the 3.5, those general wage increases for those years. However, if you take the period that the agreement covers, that doesn't meet pace with real wages. You're at the end of the contract, your money doesn't go as far. So the way you offset that is you go out an extra year. Okay, so that's this whole thing that everybody's talking about. We go out an extra year for a fourth year at 6.5%. And if you average the 6.5 to the 9.5, that it averages 4, and that is standard. Actually, to be honest with you, that's at the low end what the industry. For the period that the agreement covers, neighboring railroads, commuter railroads, and even the freights are well above 4. They're 4.5. When you take a 7-year agreement, 0.5% a year, it adds up quick. So, all our data shows this is at the lowest end of the spectrum, and they're acting like we're trying to bankrupt them.
And what do you say to assertions that some of your members make $350K with overtime and penalty?
Sure, yeah. So those are outliers. That's not a standard or a normal occurrence. Grand Central opened 2 years ago. And with that, there was a shortage of the workforce and an increase in service by, I think, 40%, they were saying. Some people were working around the clock, but that's not the standard. Of course, they want you to believe that. They want you to believe that everybody comes in and makes $350,000 a year. It just simply isn't the case.
Fred Mocker, Pix 11. Just back to the work rule clarification of where you are on that. Does that mean no discussion of it is on the table? One thing that keeps coming up, or I've heard mentioned, is the engineer that gets paid a certain amount to move a diesel truck, and to move a diesel engine within a yard.
Yeah.
So like line item specific things,
So
we're not talking those.
What I can say to you is that they were never serious about any of this stuff. It was, we reached a deal with another union, take it. If you want more, pay for it. And in order to pay for it, you're moving the money around from here to there, and essentially your money at the end of the agreement isn't going as far. They were never serious about it until the end. So I can't even tell you what they're going to say. Who knows what they're going to say next week?
We have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Anyone else? So I want to thank everybody for coming. Yes, from Bloomberg.
I'm sorry, Michelle Caskey, Bloomberg News. how soon do you anticipate hearing a response from the Trump administration?
Well, the cooling off period, the current cooling off period that we're in runs out at 12:01 a.m. on Thursday, September 18th. So I expect we'll be hearing right before then.
And all the leaders of these unions will be able to hang around for a few minutes. We have another media availability out on Long Island. That's not really a news conference. It's just for those that couldn't make it here. But people will be able to be here for one-on-one interviews or to answer any questions or clarifications beyond this. But I want to thank everyone for coming out today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hanging on a little bit.